NCAA text line as well. This is a story by Pat Forty in Sports Illustrated. NCAA embroiled in chaos. Notre Dame's Swarbrick calls Division I breakup inevitable. Here's one of the quotes in this article. He called it inevitable, the breakup, and we know what we're talking about, the haves and have-nots, and it's getting the gap with the SEC and Big Ten getting larger. Puts potential target date on the seismic change as the mid-2030s. He also said there are so many schools trying to leave their own current conferences, but they're handcuffed because of existing contracts, talking about the grant of rights. There's always been sort of a spectrum. And I want to stress that everything along the spectrum is valid. It's not criticism. On one end of the spectrum, you license the school name and run an independent business that's engaged in sports. The other end of the spectrum, you're integrated into a university's terms of decision-making and requirements, and some follow that. I think both can produce great athletic competition, but it's hard to get there given the contractual obligations that already exist. Absent a national standard, which I don't see coming, I think it's inevitable, talking about the split up, the up and down of whatever happens with the separation. He also mentioned this, and he did mention that there's no question about the Texas and Oklahoma and how that, of course, kind of created the shockwaves. I've been toying with a bunch of concepts, most of which probably don't work as far as trying to keep this thing on a national level together. But we've got to get something advanced that people will react. We've got to get to something advanced that people will react to. My goal was to steer this to a safe harbor. That may be a pipe dream, especially take the word safe out of it. I'd like to take a real shot at trying to facilitate something people will at least consider nationally so we can make progress. I'd hate to leave without trying. Now, he's also referring to the college football playoff, which, of course, he's the only athletic director on that expansion committee.
Well, he's the one. He's also a athletic director and his own conference commissioner, essentially, yes, because of Notre Dame's independent status and the fact that they're such a huge name when it comes to independence. So he's a little bit different, and he's been trying to get the playoff expanded, and the playoff expanding would at least, I think, probably stave that off for a while. But if it doesn't go the way that the big boys want it to, then they'll just make their own rules and leave eventually, because the money is going to be on their side to do whatever they want to do whenever they want to do it.
Yeah, I think this, him saying that what we could possibly see is basically pro teams just using like the Alabama logos and saying they're Alabama football. I think that freaking sucks, man. What are we doing here? I think that that's such a terrible idea. I don't need another NFL light. We have college football. It's college football. College football is not special because of the logos all the time. It's the parades. It's the camaraderie. It's the feeling that you have when you've gone to the same school as a bunch of other people for 4 years, 5 years, whatever it may be, and you come back to campus to visit your old college hometown and root on the football team. Like, I just feel as though, even though the NCAA and college sports has been all about the money for a long time, like, it's just so gross now, just how upfront it all is. And this is not an indictment of players getting paid or anything like that. I just think the fact that we're even debating 2 years, less than 2 years into NIL, it's created this fracture that's, now talking about splitting up even more so, and basically having a league where it's just Texas in name and logo and whatever only, but not really attached to the school. Like, what are we doing? Like, does anybody just ever stop throughout these headlines and just go like, wait a second, can we stop and think about this for a second? Like, how does anybody think that's a great direction to go in? I know there's a lot of people out there that just root for people to make money no matter what, and it's all about just the entertainment and enjoyment. But like, man, I feel like we're losing like a lot of principles along the way, and just a lot of like relationship building along the way, and everybody's just money chasing, and it's gross. And I get it. And hey, if somebody plopped $100K in front of me to go do some NIL thing, like I get it. I would take that money. I would need that money. But it's become so much about the money that, and I know it has been for a long time, but like now more than ever, now we're on a daily basis is like, hey, here's this new NIL deal, and here's this new charity in air quotes that's been formed to basically just throw a middle finger at the rules of NIL. And I mean, we knew people were going to do that, but like the Miami thing with Nigel Pack, you try to even criticize that in the first, so you don't want players to get paid. No, it's not that, moron. It's that I think it's a bit ridiculous that Miami is basically just throwing middle fingers in the air and saying, like, we know this isn't the purpose and intention of it, and it's not really great for college athletics overall, but we don't care because we want to win. And that's everybody's mentality, and I get you got to fend for yourself, but, man, it just sucks.
They don't care also because no one's going to do anything about it.
No, there's nobody to do anything about it because the one, I guess, entity that can't, because they're too afraid of their decisions not mattering, because that's what they, basically did to themselves over the years, over 2-3 decades, just sitting on their hands, collecting money and making money off of athletes. So I don't think they're innocent parties in this either. They're as much, the head of the NCAA and just all parties involved in the legislation and all that stuff with NIL and the kept kicking the can down the road. Yeah, they're as much to blame as anybody for it being the way that it is now. But, like, I hate that you can't say, like, can we just get some uniformity? And, Joe Blow 47's like, you don't want players to get paid. It's not that. Have the players get paid. Have Nigel Pack make $400,000 just for being Nigel Pack. Like, that's awesome. But it's become so much about the money that I'm just appreciative of, not to say that Baylor's not an NIL. They absolutely are. But I at least appreciate that Dave Aranda still seems like a college coach. He doesn't seem like an NFL head coach just going out and buying free agents. Well, and I know there's some of that, but it still feels like college football in a way, but a lot of these other programs, they're not feeling like college football as much anymore.
I think two things we can take away from this is that what has happened in the last year and change is that now the pretense of I'm all about the college athletics and all, the format of, education, all that, that's gone. Like, you don't have to pretend like you care about that if you don't anymore. You don't.
True.
You don't have to. So the people who used to pretend to have to say to care about it, they don't have to care about it anymore. They can just be like, here's the rules. This is what I want. All I care about is winning, and boom, here's money. The other thing is that the NCAA has taught us a lesson that I hope we learned. When you are 100% unwilling to compromise, when you lose, the winners will not compromise with you because you told them for years, we will not compromise. This is what the NCAA is. We're keeping this money. This money is for us. You can't make this money. You can't. So then when the dam breaks, it's broken.
Yeah.
Because you said as an organization, this is the only way that it can be. We can't be anywhere else. We're not even going to sit in a room and talk about it.
Here's Swarbrick, Paul, and what you guys were talking. Name, image, likeness, landscape. Is it sustainable? The answer was a blunt no. Recruiting inducements were not the original ideal, but that's what it's become. He said this morphed so quickly in the talent acquisition fees that it's really, truly stunning. Two things happened. The schools that have been doing under the table this long time just had a way that they could now describe it and be covered. That created a whole bunch of pressure on other schools that said, oh my God, we've got to do that too. We went from what people thought was an overly restrictive market, which was, of course, created by the NCAA, to the most unrestricted labor market in the history of any level of sports. And so the NCAA can't rein it in. That's from the Notre Dame AD, as you mentioned also, Paul, basically the conference commissioner, because they're on their own.
Yeah, and I know there's a lot of people that won't care. Like, they don't care. They're a Texas fan or a Michigan fan or a Penn State fan or something, and they know their team will be included in whatever that breakoff is, but it's not going to be college football. It's just going to basically be the NFL when that day comes in the 2030s or whatever. And it's also interesting that he was talking, and, like, that's the thing, too, is, like, all this unleashed, like, no rules, whatever, guess what's going to eventually happen? This is going to turn into unions, and this is going to turn into employees, and this is going to turn in a different way. Like, that's inevitable now at this point with all the money that's being thrown around, because it's so unregulated that you mean to tell me that the government's not going to see all this money being thrown around, or just officials in general, and realize, like, oh yeah, we gotta start changing something here. We need to look further into this. Like, that's coming, So
And I think the NCAA is also kind of, the people benefiting from this are also benefiting from, we're at a point in history where we have the least amount of government action on anything in the world because the government kind of is really good at low-hanging fruit, which passing NIL was low-hanging fruit. What can I do to make everybody happy in my state? Well, California did this, Texas, Florida, we all did this because now college athletes can make money. Great. All right. Are the roads fixed? No, that's too hard.
Yeah.
And so that's where we're kind of at. So that regulation is not a thing right now.
813 just have 14 conferences with 9 teams each. It's not going to happen.
But that won't even be it, though.
You've
got way too many teams included.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing is like I said, a Michigan fan or a USC fan or whatever, they know they're good. In this conversation, they'll be all for it. Why? Because they can spend the money. They're among those brands. But all you Iowa State fans, Baylor fans, TCU fans, any number. The only school that doesn't belong that's going to be involved is Vanderbilt just because they're already in. But, I mean, if they weren't already in the
they're
SEC,
grandfathered in, yeah.
They would be booted the hell out in no time because, I mean, really, what do they bring other than academics? And I don't mean that as a slight on Vandy. It's just true.
Against the other sports. We're talking football.
Yeah,
we're
talking college
about.
football,
yeah.
the moneymaker, basically. But, I just think that, there's probably a lot of people like, oh, that'd be cool. And then you're going to realize in 10 years when it happens, like, your school's not involved. Your school's in the what's going to be considered like AAA ball, basically. So get ready for actually the majority of schools, maybe not fans because those big schools' fan bases are so large, but the majority of schools – I don't think this is good news for them unless they become basically the real college athletics that isn't just open market buying players like it's a Sotheby's auction or something.
The 813, when you mentioned that, we're not making fun of your solution. We're just saying it's just not going to happen.
I'm just saying
it's going to get
There's too many included in that for it to be like that.
Yep, and so there we are with that. And then let's see here. Okay, when we